Hi everyone, my name is Joseph. I go by Audi Snapper on the forums. This video is about my 1/10 scale Nitro powered solid rear axle 2-speed trophy truck, which I created from scratch using the Camberg Kinetic trophy truck as a basis for design. I modeled the cage after that. The overall dimensions of this particular 10 scale truck is taken from the Axial Yeti Score trophy truck with the intent of using those bodies once the truck was finished. In this particular case, I'm using the Proline Raptor body, as you could probably tell by the name on the rear fender. The video is really intended to highlight some of the overall details of the truck and to give an opportunity for people who are looking to build this type of truck themselves a chance to ask questions, hopefully which I can answer. I'm new to this. I'm a little late to the game in that I think these custom trophy trucks have been pretty popular over the last couple years. There's a couple guys out there that have been doing some really remarkable stuff with them as far as handling and even the videography that some of these guys have been putting together with the slow motion clips and whatnot. So big kudos to those guys. I can get into as much detail as everybody wants, but for now I'll just give a quick overview of some of the highlights of my particular truck. As you can see, it's a Proline body, or as I've already said, I've used Duplicolor's vinyl paint, which you can pick up in most auto parts store. Turns out that vinyl paint adheres really well to these Lexan bodies, and you don't get any chipping. In my particular case, I painted the inside and the outside the same color with the intent on having that matte look. Obviously, once the paint gets scratched on the exterior of the body, it starts to show through, so it's kind of a love-hate relationship. You scratch the body, you lose the matte look, but overall I think it still looks pretty good. Let me remove the body and we can start getting into some of the details of the truck itself. So as you can see, it's all tube frame. In my particular case, I chose to go with tube and solid rod steel. It's all brazed together. I opted to braze it because from my research I found that guys were having a lot of problem TIG welding the tubes together, and because I wanted to stay true as much as possible to the Camberg chassis, the weight was going to be a real issue. The real Camberg chassis has just a ton of cross members and support pieces and so forth. So adding all of those pieces to the cage would just, in solid rod form, would make this thing incredibly heavy. So the bulk of the main runners, the main hoops, anything that I thought that was going to take real abuse is solid rod. Whereas a lot of the infill pieces and cross members, throughout the chassis, just depending on where it was, is tube. I spent some time developing ways to put fish mouths on these tubes and rods so that they went together real snugly. I thought that was real important. Staying true to the tube frame build. Obviously at this scale it's not critical, but it's something that I was doing just as part of the hobby. As you can see, I'm using or I have a black panel kind of skin on this, which is I think real popular with the 1-to-1 trophy trucks. Probably helps keep a lot of the debris out of the cockpit and out of the other components on the truck. I happen to be using an ABS plastic that I purchased from McMaster Car, which by the way is where I purchased a lot of my raw materials, the tubes, the rods, aluminum, anything that was in raw form I purchased from there. I even got a box of 50 8mm long, 3mm, button head screws, which I use throughout this entire project. I've spent, I don't know how much money at McMaster-Carr over the years on different hobbies, but they're an invaluable asset. If you don't know them, I'll put the link in the box below so that you guys can check them out. Again, it's McMasterCarr.com. I have no affiliation, but they've been really good to me, so I'd be happy to give them a shout out. Overall, like I said before, the truck is based on the Axial Yeti, so I'm using components from the Axial Yeti trophy truck. The front end control arms are from the Axial Yeti. These are some cheap Chinese, $4 control arms that you get from China, and they take a month to arrive, but they seem to be doing the job for now. There's some really great alternatives out there, and I think once maybe I get this truck dialed in, I'll spring for a Metal Concept front control arms that Mike just recently released for this particular truck. Same goes for the carriers, the hub carriers, and the knuckles. Just some cheap Chinese stuff. Speaking of Metal Concepts, I'm using the Metal Concept rear end. Great piece, solid build. I can't say enough about Mike and the product that he's been putting out. It's just a beautiful piece. I'm also using the lower links from Metal Concepts. The upper links are just some custom piece that I made to work with my particular setup. I'm not sure if you guys can see those. We'll jump right into suspension, I guess. So I'm using the Proline shocks. The front, I think, is a rear slash, Traxxas slash, if I'm not mistaken. And then the rear is the 5-inch long Axial Yeti Proline shock, which seems to be doing the trick. One of the things that I think a lot of guys have come across in using the Proline shocks is there's not a whole lot of springs out there to support the weight of these particular trucks. I think my truck's weighing in right around 12 pounds, which I think is pretty reasonable compared to some of the other trucks that are out there. But the spring situation was really tough. I spent probably $20-$30 on just miscellaneous springs over the course of a week or two, trying to find just the right spring. And most of the springs that are advertised as 16mm, they're not truly 16mm in inner dimension or inner diameter, I guess, which is what ID stands for. Even these springs, which are I believe Lotus or Losi springs, they're older gold Losi springs. You get the front and the rear as a package. They're not true 16mm ID either, but they might be 17 or 16 and a half. They're a little bit too big, but they seem to work. And in my particular case, they seem to support the truck just enough, better than the Proline springs that come with the shocks. In addition to the rear Proline shock, I'm running the H&R. Can't really get a good shot of it, but it's the H&R inner spring shock. It's really meant for a rock crawler application, but because it does have a spring inside, it does add to the spring capacity or the spring for the rear. So they do actually add a little bit of support, and I'm happy to keep them on for now. They seem to be doing the job. I'm real happy with the overall way the suspension reacts. I've done a couple drop tests from anywhere from 18 to 24 inches, and this thing lands really nice. It settles really nice. So hopefully I'll be able to kind of use that once I start getting into some more aggressive driving. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, this is a Nitro powered truck. I know it's not real popular these days. Nitro power seems to be kind of tough to deal with for a lot of guys, and with the advent of the brushless motor and so forth, I understand. I have an axial score myself, and it's good fun. So I have a background with on-road touring car racing, 20 years ago, I guess, back in the day. So that's where this all sort of came from. I had a Nitro TC3, a team associated car sitting around with a couple race engines, and instead of running those things around on the street, I figured it was time to turn that thing into something a little bit more fun. So I actually did end up cutting up the chassis, and I used part of the chassis inside to mount the engine. The front diff is from a Nitro TC3. I'm using the 2-speed setup at the engine as part of the Nitro TC3. That came at a price though, because Nitro or a team associate doesn't offer the gearing that would ideally match up with this particular truck. I've had to do a lot of digging. I found some old AFNA gear setups that seem to have worked okay. Right now I'm running for my first gear, I'm running a 14-tooth pinion with a 48-tooth spur gear. And my second gear, or my second speed, is probably in the range of 21 and 48, or 42, I'm sorry, 21 and 42. It's a lot more speed than I can handle right now. So right now I'm not even getting into a second gear. This truck is just not ready, or I'm not ready as a driver to handle that kind of speed with a locked rear diff, solid rear axle, two-wheel drive trophy truck. It's just a monster. So many of you guys are probably thinking that I need to man up, but it's tough. I mean, this thing really it moves. So speaking of the engine, it's a 0.19 Dynamite engine. It's new to me. I didn't want to mount up my race engines for my touring car. I've got a 0.12, a 0.15. I've got some OS engines, and I just not knowing exactly what this truck was going to do, I didn't want to potentially damage those engines. So I threw down 100 bills, I think it is, for that particular engine, just to kind of start with something fresh and something that I could beat on and not worry too much about. So I mean, the overall kind of theme here is everything's custom. I mean, there's lots of pieces that I've taken from one car or another, mostly from the Nitro TC3, but there's a lot of custom elements on here. I'm trying to adapt the upper control arm to the Axial Yeti. It was custom. The whole cage setup, the front clip is all custom. The roll bars are custom. Everything, I guess, is more or less custom on here. So a lot of you guys know, as you put these things together, things don't necessarily fit the way that you would hope, so you kind of have to tweak and modify, and I found that out pretty quickly. Let me add a little bit more detail, I guess, in the rear. So I have custom rear sway bar. I tried to model it after the trophy truck. So we've got the rear bar that goes through a tube. The arms I actually created from a piece of aluminum that I bought from McMaster-Carr. I planned all along to buy something off the shelf, but when it came down to it, it really wasn't that hard to do. I guess one of the other unique features of my particular truck is I have a custom bump stop. These, I believe, are 120 scale or somewhere along those lines. Rock crawler shocks. I took the spring out of it that comes with it and replaced it with a much beefier spring. The spring that came with it is real lightweight. It was meant for rock crawling, so I need something that could kind of handle the impact of the rear axle and help slow it down. I took the eyelet off of the shock and I added I think this is just a piece of an antenna, the little rubber caps from the old antennas back in the day before the 2.4 gigahertz radio systems. As I mentioned before, I'm running the Metal Concepts lower link. Great piece. It's good to look at, and it worked out really well. It's real beefy and so forth. What else can I say? Lots of little details on here that I could talk about. The fueling for, let me throw this up on the stand so I can just spin it around. see that all right. The fueling setup is actually a live setup, so I can actually, if I can get this cap off, I can actually fuel the truck from this back port. I've got a line that runs to the fuel cell. That way, once the body's on, I don't have to worry about trying to, get the fuel nozzle into the tank. I do plan on changing this tank. Right now, this is the touring car, probably 75 milliliter or cc tank, whatever it is. It's not much, and this truck eats up a lot of fuel. I think trying to get this thing from zero to anything requires a lot of fuel, it being as heavy as it is. So I'm actually able to fuel from here, which is helpful, and it somewhat resembles, a fueling nozzle for the real trophy trucks. I added one of the challenges that I came across with this particular truck was that since it's so heavy, the single rear or the single disc brake that comes on a touring car setup that's meant for all-wheel drive, it just wasn't sufficient enough to slow this thing down. I don't know if you guys can see that, but it's a small little disc in here, and since I'm only connected to two-wheel drive right now, this particular disc setup, no matter how strong the servo was, just wasn't cutting it. I could lock these rear wheels up and it still wasn't going to slow the truck down that well. So as I got into this a little bit further, I realized that I was going to need some front brakes, and that's one of the things that is unique about my particular truck is I developed a front brake setup, and I'll show you guys that here as soon as I get the wheel off. So this front brake setup was developed from an 8th scale buggy center brake setup. Most of the gas cars have some sort of center diff brake setup, and in trying to figure all of this out, I was able to use this particular disc and develop a 3D printed brake carrier, which was a very easy process if you're good on CAD programs and you're able to model things yourself. This was a $7 print, pretty inexpensive. I think it took me two tries to get it right, so fairly inexpensive setup, just to develop my own brakes. One of the other things that I had to do was I had to create, probably a little hard to see, but I had to create an adapter because this particular disc has a 14 millimeter hex, whereas the wheels, the hex on here is a 12 millimeter. So I had to create a 1 millimeter adapter between the two. It seems to be working out okay. I haven't really put the brakes through the paces yet. It does stop the truck much better than having just a single rear brake. But with the limited time that I've had this thing out, I just haven't really put it through the ringer yet. So it's something that I'm still testing and hope to have some good feedback on, just to kind of give an overview of what it looks like. It's a cable system, and the cable system comes to a point where the servo can grab both cables and pull them at the same time. These threaded screws, I guess you can call them, allow for fine tuning the individual brakes. One might be pulling harder than the other, so this allows me to adjust them independently, as does the set screws, but that's more of the setting it, overall tune, and then these are the fine tune setups. The brake is controlled by the same servo that's doing the gas for the engine and the rear brake, so it's all on one setup. As it pulls back, it pulls the front brake and pushes the rear brake. And as it goes forward, obviously, it's throttle for the gas. What else can I share? I think overall, that's probably the bulk of it. I've got a few items that I'm real happy with and a few items that I'm not entirely sure yet. The wheels that I have are some, eBay, probably some cheap Chinese knockoff aluminum wheels, but I've got to say, these particular wheels I'm very impressed with. The fit and finish was, I think perfect. I'm real happy with them. The bead locks are holding these particular tires on really well. These wheels, it took me a while to find just the right wheel because I needed a 2-inch wheel that was going to clear my brake setup. The brake setup was designed for a 2-inch wheel, but some 2-inch wheels have much deeper screw holes and so forth, so they would get in the way of the brake carriers. And in this particular case, this wheel worked out perfect. I think there might be a scratch or two on here where like a rock got in between the brake carrier and the wheel itself, but I think I have a good millimeter and a half clearance. The tires are something I'm unsure of right at the moment. These are the Dune TA tires that are put out by RC 4-wheel drive, and although they look the part, you know, they look like they're modeled after either BFG or other similar tire that a lot of the trophy truck guys run. At this particular scale, I don't know if they have enough bite on the dirt to really be effective, at least for my driving skills. The back end is constantly breaking loose, so I don't know if it's just a product of the way the truck is set up, or the lack of traction is due to just the tires themselves. They're nice and soft. Overall, the foam inside is way too soft for a 12-pound or heavier truck. I replaced the foam with my own custom setup. The front, I have 3 layers. I left 1 layer out to provide a little bit more bite up front to make sure I didn't push too much and had a little bit more steering. The rear is a little bit firmer. I've got 4 layers in there, and that may again add to the handling woes that I have right now. Actually, I have a tear in this tire from rolling over. Something that I'm still working on, just trying to figure out the whole setup. Again, I'm new to the 2-wheel drive, solid rear axle trophy truck setup, so for me, I'm still dialing in the suspension, and at some point hope to have some great slow motion videos like some of the other guys that have been doing these for a while. Speaking of sway bars in suspension, I have my own custom front sway bar setup. I'm using the same size sway bar rod in the front that I am in the rear. It's still something that I'm trying to work out. It's not really 100% effective, I don't think, but it's it does something. It definitely adds a little extra spring. Once the one wheel is up, the other wheel is much easier to move around. I'm using the H&R limiting straps. I had originally bought these for the rear. I had to bump up the rear a little bit because the droop was way too much, but they ended up working out for the front, so that was a nice little bonus. I didn't waste them. What else can I share? The rear body mount is something that came out of the bag for the Axial Yeti. I'm not sure what it was intended for. I'm sure it's some sort of body mount because it had the holes drilled and so forth. I added this little piece on the end with the Velcro. To me, it's real important that the body doesn't flop around a lot. I see lots of videos out there, especially the slow motion videos where the guys are, running over some rough terrain and the body's just flexing and bumping around. And to me, it takes away from the look and the overall scale effect of everything. So for me, it was real important to add as many points of contact as possible. So that's actually what these are. This is, I guess, kind of looks like a Nerf bar. It wasn't intended to actually protect for any reason. It was really meant just to for the body to sit up against it so that the sides of the body aren't flopping around. Again, that's what I added this one for. In the rear helps to keep that rear fender from flopping around, which again is something that was important to me. Probably some people just don't care, but it adds a little bit more realism. I think I mentioned earlier that this is ABS plastic. If I didn't, that's what this is. Again, I got this from McMaster Car. These are individual panels. Well, I should say this is one individual panel. It's 4 sections. It was one piece. I scored it with a blade and then slowly worked it so that it creased. and it gives it that faceted look. But this is all one panel. This is all one panel. And then this rear section that goes all the way back to the end is all one rear panel, or all one panel as well. Again, there's just score lines. I kind of cracked it, worked it so that it folded over, and once it's mounted, it keeps its shape and it doesn't fall apart. So real happy with the way that turned out. I've considered sandblasting the black to take the shininess off of it, but as you can see, once it gets dirty, it really doesn't seem to matter much. In the rear, I'm using, I think these are axial wheels. I didn't want to spring for another, set of aluminum wheels, so these are just, just that trophy truck look, dual spare wheel setup. It's not something that I've really gotten into as far as trying to do the scale thing. I don't have fire extinguishers and reservoirs and all that stuff, and it's not because I don't like it or don't want to do it. It's at this stage I'm still developing the truck. It's all very new to me, so it's something that may come down the road. I recently broke my drive shaft, so now I have a drive shaft that I can mount to the back, which seems to be pretty common in the trophy truck world. So again, that's something that might happen down the road. I guess one of the other unique differences for my particular truck is that I built the cage from scratch, in or not scratch, but there is no base plate. I know a lot of the other trophy trucks that are floating around start with an aluminum base plate and they build off of that. This particular truck is, it doesn't mean anything other than it was something that I tried to do. It's all tube frame all the way around. I didn't add the two pieces that go here just because I lost focus and jumped to other things, but that's something that probably should be added later on, just to add a little bit more stiffness. That's more or less it, guys. If you have any questions, feel free to leave comments or questions down below. I'm hoping that if anybody's looking to start off on this endeavor, that this video will help kind of share some insight as to what guys like me have put into it. I'm sure there's a lot of other videos out there that you can get some more information on. But again, don't hesitate to ask any questions. I'll put as many links as I can down in the in the comment section below. But if you guys hear anything that or didn't hear anything that you want me to fill you in on and give you some more detail, I'll be happy to. So again, my name's Joseph. I go by Audi Snapper on the forums. I'll put my build thread down in there so that if you want to kind of see the process that I went through, building the wood dowel version first and developing all of the details that way, it's all there. I put everything on there. I built this entire truck as much as humanly possible in the computer first, so I was able to use a lot of the 3D tools to help develop clearances, and even when I was doing the brazing for the cage, I was able to lay the components on top of printed pieces of paper that helped me get the truck really square, really symmetrical, and worked all the pieces worked out really well. So anyway, thanks for watching. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to post them up, and I'll do my best to answer them.